Good afternoon, and welcome to K2's Road to Excellence with Excel, Part 1, and our partner TaxCycle.
This is Alan Salmon, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the first mini-webinar of 2018. Before we get started, I have a little bit of administrative stuff to deal with, so let's get started. First of all, I will be teaching today in Excel 2016. For those of you on 2013, 10, and 7, it won't be a problem. You will be able to do everything that I'm going to do with you and for you today. I'm pleased that Marilyn, my good friend, is back again as my backup, and she is your go-to person if you have any technical problems or if you want to ask any questions. We deal with questions a bit differently now. Please ask all of the questions through the chat window. And then when you receive the webinar recording, my teaching notes, teaching files, and your CPD certificate, all of you will get the questions and the answers so that you're all in tune. It marks the start of a new series that we're calling the Road to Excellence in Excel. And in this session and the session next week, I'm going to focus on formatting, which is a hugely important part of our work. There are studies out there that show that we spend 50% of our time on formatting our wonderful spreadsheets. And of course, there's a reason for that. It makes it much easier to understand. So I'm going to start with the first session of that. And I had a question from Elizabeth Cole, who is the TaxCycle presenter, and I'm going to answer that first off.
And because I like Elizabeth, I'm actually going to give her the answer to her question and what I intended to do first off. So Elizabeth, if we look at row 6, no problem with that. Budgeted, no problem. But this is the problem that Elizabeth was having. In other words, the data is too wide for the cell, and the same thing here. So the solution to that, Elizabeth, one solution, and it's the solution that you want to do, is highlight all of these cells. And then go to the crack, which is that vertical line between cells, and double click. So it has automatically adjusted the width of the columns. So you will do that to your spreadsheet, double click, and your problem is solved. However, in this case, I don't think we want that. That doesn't look good. So we're going to use a tool that I suspect many of you have used, and that is this. You're going to go up to wrap text, and the problem is solved. However, being picky, I don't like that. And I suspect most of you at this point in time would center it. But how many of you at this point in time know that you can center it vertically? And there we go. So I suspect the teaching tip here was how to center vertically. Pretty easy to do. Now, let's go on and deal with the numbers when I get this organized. And when I select these 3 sets of numbers and take a look up here, they are formatted to the general format. And typically that's what you get when you export things from programs like TaxCycle. Now the implications of the general format is this. What you type is what you get. So I'm going to type in 1.84 and 3.95 or 6. And notice what I get. Exactly what I typed in. Now look at the vertical alignment. We've got the S-curve. And that drives me, and I suspect most of you, around the bend. So how do we fix that? Well, we use the accounting format. And you're going to say, what's the accounting format? Well, all of you use it all of the time and don't realize what you're doing. So I'm going to click on the comma, and presto, notice what we got. Everything formatted to 2 decimal places. And the vertical alignment for my decimal point is in place. And it also solved another problem. Because if I use a negative number in my previous format, again, everything will be moved over to include room for the bracket. But notice with the accounting format, not a problem. I still have a vertical alignment. And the reason for that is very simple. If I select the cell, notice that there's a space between the 4 and the bracket, and the same thing on the other side. So a key thing for getting your numbers right, in my opinion, is using the accounting format. Now, let's deal with another issue that I and most of you have, and that is when it comes to underlines.
What you have on your screen now in front of you is a very simple kind of budget, and you'll notice that there are some underlines there. And those underlines are created by selecting the cells and then going up here into the toolbar and clicking on the underline icon. Now, the other thing that I want to point out to you is this, and that is that the format for these cells is general. And when we use the standard underline, what that means is that the underline, as you'll see, goes the width of the number, and only the width of the number. And I suspect that most of you don't like that. And therefore, you don't use the underline, you use a bottom border like this. And there we go. And when you do that, then you have this situation. You insert a column, you narrow the column width, you select the column, and you turn off the underline. And I could have done it for the other columns all at once, but in the interest of time, I didn't. Now that's a lot of work. And in my opinion, a much better way is this. Let's undo this. And let's convert all of these numbers to the accounting format by clicking on the comma. And I need to undo. So with the accounting format selected for these cells, watch what happens now when I do an underline. And I'm doing it through the underline icon. Notice now that the underline runs from almost the column, right-hand column width, to the left-hand column. And there's a space in there. And when I use the underline with the underline icon in the accounting format, the underline goes from wall to wall, and regardless of the number. So if I make this 56 or 54, we get it. And it does the same thing down here if I use a double underline. So a great time saver for me is A, to use the accounting format, and then do a normal underline.
So I'm going to let you know that about 95% of the time, or even higher, I will always use the dollar sign, which gives me the accounting format, or the comma. On that note, Marilyn, it's time for our first poll, please.
Great, Alan. So, folks, you should be seeing a poll question about custom number formats. Try to be honest. Have you ever used a custom number format? Your answers are never. Maybe a few times, but you didn't really understand them. Or, if you're like Alan, you use them regularly. Lots of great responses early on, Alan. We're at 90%. I'm going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And let's
Now, Marilyn, I don't have my second computer on today, so can you read me the percentages of each question, please?
Yes, absolutely. So we have 10% of folks have never used custom number formats, 25% have used them a few times, don't really understand them, and 65% say they use them regularly.
All right, that's great. So I have a new spreadsheet in front of me, and I would have liked to have asked 2 polling questions here, but I'm only get 2 for the whole thing. So the question that I would have asked, and I think I know the answer, is that a number of you deal in very large numbers. And you have a tendency, when you have 243,585,573 in a operation report like this, to do this to it. You want to display them in thousands. So you go here and you do this. And then you copy it down. And there we go. And I'd love to know how many of you do it that way. Now, does it work? Absolutely. Is there a hidden gotcha here? Absolutely. Now, if all of your numbers in your entire spreadsheet, actually workbook, are divided by 1,000, you don't have a problem. But let's say on another spreadsheet, and by the way, this number has been physically changed to this. On another spreadsheet, you reference this, think you're getting this, and you've got a problem. And that's one of the common errors. So what's the solution to that? Well, pretty simple. We're going to use a custom format. Now remember that you're going to get this file. And on this file, in the 4th tab, I put up the custom codes for formatting in thousands, millions, and so on, with both dollar signs and without dollar signs. So if we go here and look up here, there's the code if you want to format it to the accounting format, which is what the underscores are on both sides in the first section up to the semicolon. Then we're saying we want $1, and then we want any numbers. We want to divide it by 1,000, and we want 2 decimal places. When I go to the second part here, this is how I'm going to format my negative numbers. Space, $, any number, and then I want brackets around the negative number. After the second semicolon, we get how do I want to format my zeros? In this case, I'm saying format it with a dash. And then finally, the 4th section is a label, and I can't recall the last time I did a custom format. So what's the secret to dividing by 1,000? Well, it's this formula right here, and it's exactly the same as the one up above. And if your eyesight is really good, after the 0, you can see a comma. After the 0, here you see a comma. And that's the signal to Excel to divide the numbers by 1,000. If I want to do millions, I've got 2 commas here. Billions, 3. So let's go back here now and look at those numbers now. So notice it's formatted to 2 decimal places. It's divided by 1,000, but look up here. And it's saying bring in the actual number from B7. The actual number is this. So every number that is formatted to thousands with that custom format is going to use the original number. Ditto with the millions. Again, it's saying actuals. So there's a tip for those of you that are working with big numbers. And again, I would remind you that you're going to get this file. Now we have a similar situation with dates. So let me get this file. And just let me move this up a little bit. Whoops, move this up a little bit. And there's nothing magic to this file. So, retail sales division. Sales for September and October, there's the revenue numbers. And there's the 6 month to date. Now, up here, we've got a label for the 3 months ended November 30th, 2017. And I'll come back to that. Now, if we select November and look up here, we see 2017-11-30, which means that that's the date. Now, I hope most of you understand that even though that says 2011 or 17, 11, and 30, that is actually the number, and it's the number of days between this date and January the 1st, 1900. Now, since the whole date is there, how did I get December? Well, the answer to that is a custom format. And notice that the custom format is MMM. And there's 4 ways of showing the month. If I type just M into the custom format, I would get, in this case, 31. If I do MM, I would get 31 as well, but if the date was the first of the month, I would get 01. If I type in triple M, I get the condensed text of the month. And if I type in add another one, I will get the full month. Okay, so let's change this from November to December 31st. And not surprisingly, we get December there. Whoops, how about 31? That's better. But now when we look up here, magic, it's automatically changed the date. So what's the magic with that? Well, here's the formula. Equal bracket for the 3 month ended bracket. And what that means is print for the 3 month ended. And then the ampersand says add the date. Now, one of the facts of life in Excel is that you cannot combine a date and a number, or sorry, text and a number. But Excel gives us a way of doing that because there is an equal text format that will convert a number to text. Now, what I want it to do is check these 3 dates and show me, convert to text, display the date of the maximum date or the maximum number in B7 to F7, comma, and then format it to show the full month, space, date, comma, YYY, the year. And there's an interesting use and a valuable use of custom dates. Let's go on to a quick one now that really doesn't deal with formatting. It deals with working with numbers. So when we look at this screen here, I know there's formulas here. Not there, but if I go over to here, there's obviously a formula, and there's a formula down here. Now, there are times when I am working in Excel when I would love to see the formulas. So, there they are. There's the formula at the bottom. And if we go over here, there's the formulas. So I assume some of you know that I used that by hitting 2 keys. First, I held down the control key, and then I hit the squiggly key, which is the little key that looks like an S on its side, normally under the escape key, and it's a toggle. So it's off, and it's on, and it's off, and it's on. And I will use that, but there's also another little trick that I will do when I want to see work with formulas. So I'm going to highlight the numbers, and I'm going to go over here to Find and Select, the very top of the Home tab. And I'm going to go to Special. And when I do that, I get a choice of what I want to display. So I'm going to go to Formulas. I don't need text, I don't need logicals, and I don't need errors. So there's my formulas. The problem with this, if I then go to explore a formula, I've lost it. So here's plan B. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Go to Special, Formulas. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to do this, which is I'm going to color code. Now I can work away. I know the cells to explore if I need to do any exploring. And when I'm done, all I do is go back to Find and Select and show no color. And the final thing that I want to do today is something that I need another poll for, please, Marilyn.
All right, folks, we're into our last poll of the day, and it's related to styles. If you've ever used a style in Excel, you could start from the bottom and say you use them regularly. You might have a middle response, tried them a few times, but you didn't really understand them. Or some of you may never have tried styles in Excel. These are easy questions for everyone this morning, Alan. We're at 90%. I'm closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And let's just share those results. Ooh, 36% never.
Yeah, they're easy questions, but they're important questions to me. And that 67% or whatever it was doesn't surprise me, because this is I think, one of the least known things in Excel. So notice the 1500. And we go up here, and it's the accounting format. Well, let's say that I want all of the numbers on this worksheet to be just the number format. Well, I got to do that. and then I got to go there, and it's done. Instead of that, and let me do an undo, I'm going to go up here under Styles. And I'm going to click on that down arrow so that you can see what happens. Now, you can format with things with cells with backgrounds. You could format cells, whether they're a calculation, a check cell, explanatory text, or an input cell. And by the way, for those of you that are building spreadsheets where your clients are entering data, when I do that, I will use the input style to highlight every cell where I want clients to input numbers. And I can also do formatting. I can do a heading 1, heading 2, and heading 3. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go down here to New Style. And I'm going to call it Marilyn. And what are we going to do to Marilyn? Well, I want it to be currency. And I want brackets. And I want 2 decimal places. And just for show, let's do a yellow background. Okay, now nothing's happened. So notice that I have all of those numbers selected. Now watch what happens when I go here. There's Marilyn. So what I do is I create a style or a series of styles in my real workbooks that I apply when I need it. And I think it's in March, I'm going to show you how to set up a new spreadsheet to be the way you want it to be. And in that case, I will come back to styles. So on that note, I am done.
It's time now for me to hand off things to Elizabeth Cole from TaxCycle. So Elizabeth, they're all yours.
My name is Elizabeth Cole, and I'm here with TaxCycle Trilogy Software to talk to you about a couple of things that actually relate to Excel as well. I'm going to do a little introduction here with what we're about, and then we'll sort of launch into a few things. Marilyn, let me know if you feel like you need to reverse this process or interrupt me in the middle and have Alan do his and I come back later. Just let me know what you need me to do. But I'm going to just keep going unless you do. All right, so my name is Elizabeth Cole. I'm Director of Communications here, and I do a lot of webinars actually for us and our team. For our customers, but I love coming out, and I'm grateful to Alan and Marilyn for having us here today and talking to preparers and accountants and bookkeepers at large in these Excel webinars, because it gives us a different chance to talk to a different audience and find out a bit about what people care about in that world. If you haven't run into us at a trade show or online yet, Trilogy Software, the people who make TaxCycle, we're here in Calgary. Calgary, we are thankfully in the middle of a Chinook. It's a beautiful sunny day, and they're predicting 10 degrees, which for us feels like, I don't know, 35 after some of the cold we've had lately. So we're all in a great mood. We're based here in Calgary. We're Canadian, and we have a ton of experience in preparing software. That's our great leader here, Cameron Peters, and a bunch of us in the crowd, and the person in the green shirt back there if you need a face. I'm gonna go pretty fast through this demo, through this description. We've been around for 5 or 6 years. We have a full suite of federal tax preparation software, all contained in one program that you install. And we also have support for Quebec, personal, corporate, and slips right now. And so we're just getting ready for our 2017 T1 season, and our preparers are as well. If you decide to make the switch to TaxCycle, of course, we can carry forward from prior year returns and help you keep track of those returns if you need to. And really our satisfaction guarantee is what backs it. We love providing good customer service and providing great software to you. And so if you're unhappy, give us a call and we're going to do everything we can to help you. And if we can't, we will refund your money. So please give us a try and give us a call. We have free trials and we give you free support and webinars and online documentation to get you going. So it's not too late to take a look for this season if you're getting ready, especially since e-file opening this year isn't until later in February. You have a lot of time to get started. So today I'm going to talk about 4 different topics. We're basically going to deal with how TaxCycle relates to Excel. The first one talks about taking some data from TaxCycle and bringing it into Excel to help you do reconciliation there. The 2 middle items talk about getting some of your clients' data back into a tax return. So slips preparation in particular is timely right now. The slips filing system just opened recently, and so you got your T4s and your T5s and other slips that you want to prepare quickly. We have some ways to get that information from an Excel spreadsheet back into TaxCycle. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you can use TaxCycle to import basically you can import from Excel into any form. I'm going to use the example of a spreadsheet that I have that manages business income and expenses into a T1, T21, 25 income statement. But it means you can take what you do with your clients, apply some of Alan's magic to it, and then bring it into TaxCycle without a lot of difficulty. So you're kind of bridging the gap between what your clients are going to use to track their expenses, especially your small businesses, and what you need to prepare a tax return. And finally, I wanted to show you a little bit about how you can get some data about your clients out of our software. And this is sort of the bringing data back out from TaxCycle again and looking at our client manager database and how you can draw some of that data out for further use outside of tax software.
So Elizabeth, I wonder if this is a good place before you get too far in. We'll just maybe ask our first polling question.
Sounds great.
So folks, you should be seeing on your screen a nice easy one to start the year. A yes or no answer, please. This is how we provide you with verifiable PD. We need 3 of 4 polling questions answered to provide you with 1 verifiable PD credit. So today's first question, do you prepare tax returns professionally? Yes or no? We have a very good response rate, nearly 90%. I'll be closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And just so that we're all sure who's on the line today, Elizabeth, just about 50-50.
Excellent. Oh, that's great. I love to see preparers and other accounting professionals here. Thank you, Marilyn. All right, and I will pop in for another poll in a little while. I love that you reminded me, Marilyn, so feel free to break in and do that again when it's the right time, because I might get down a path here and forget, because that happens sometimes. All right, we're going to jump over to the software now so that we can take a quick look at item number 1. So when you're preparing a T1 return, for those of you who aren't preparers, you have the option to download information directly from the CRA's website, Canada Revenue Agency website, about your client. That includes slips and prior year balances and all kinds of things that you need to prepare the return. It's super handy. Preparers love it. It's one of the big time-saving features that we promote in TaxCycle because that's what our clients have been telling us. There is one area that presents a challenge, and we have added a little feature here. We did it last year in the season. I'm not sure if everybody noticed it, so I thought I would talk about it this time. So I'm going to show you an example, and I'm going to cheat. I'm not actually going to go out to the website right now and download information. I'm going to import a file that I previously, downloaded and kind of created. I can do a little bit of magic on this end when you're creating the software. So this is TaxCycle, and in here I've got a return that was carried forward and I have some slips to complete. And then it pops up and reminds me that I can actually download information from the CRA. And when I click the link in my message here, we start having the opportunity to go out, and I am just going to choose a different file. Apologies there. There's one file that I have set up, and this is all client specific. There we go. when I start my process to do autofill my return, it gives me a list of the clients for whom I can possibly download information. And then from here, if I click next, I would go out to the CRA's website and it would check those clients' social insurance numbers and give me the data that they have on file. So a bunch of slips and some other balances. To just make this faster today, I'm actually going to import a file and show you what's important about this. One of the challenges, so I'm just going to click in here and get us to the next step of the process. If I had gone out to the website, I would have come back with a window like this. And on the left-hand side, you see slips that were downloaded from the CRA. And on the right-hand side, you see a preview of the one that I have, the slip that is currently selected. One of the things preparers have told us that a challenge is there's certain types of slips that the CRA has a bajillion of. So, for example, T5008s or T3s. And yet, as a preparer, they get a statement from their clients. So they'll get a summary statement of investments or that have been made. And they have trouble reconciling these two. Now, the reason why the CRA has so many slips is that's how the banks or the investment companies report it to them. And so they're just passing on that information. And that, I don't know when that decision was made. It might have been a while ago, but basically that's how that information ends up here in a preparer's autofill my return. And on the other side, you have your client come in and they've got a nice little neat statement that summarizes all these things. And somehow you have to make sense of this without cluttering up your tax return. So what we do a couple things. There's an option to aggregate slips and then import groups of them if you want. That's what's going on here right now with my aggregate three slips. But what we've added here is an ability to export those lists to Excel. So at the top right of the window here, I'm just worried that my GoToWebinar controls are going to cover that. At the top right of the window here, I have the ability to export these details that were downloaded to Excel. And if I click that, it gives me an Excel spreadsheet with which I can then, did it open? Yeah, there it is. Then I can do what I want in Excel to reconcile the data that was downloaded. So you can apply some of Alan's magic and whatever calculations you need to be able to do that reconciliation. Now, if I'm playing with this in Excel, I of course don't want to import each of those individual slips. So back in TaxCycle, I can choose to not import all these slips and just exclude them. So that's what I can do up here. So we've had reports of people who do these kinds of returns who will have, 100 slips or something like that. And you really don't want to have to deal with them in your tax return when all you want to deal with is totals and values. So I can quickly click do not import 32 slips here, and it's going to mark them as do not import. And even when I click the import data button and want to get the rest of the information into my tax return, they will not go. I can manage all of it here in the spreadsheet and then do a single data entry in TaxCycle when I'm ready. So for those of you who are already using TaxCycle or who are managing these kinds of tax returns, just wanted to point that out, a little bit of an Excel integration that you can manage. Okay, that was a quick one, sort of a warm up. And the next one that I want to look at with you is the story of being able to get your client's data into TaxCycle. So in the same tax return, this family, or this gentleman, Jay, actually has a small business he runs. He makes cupcakes. I think I probably made up this example because cupcakes are still popular. They're the fancy cupcake shops. And my kid, every time I walk by one of these places, he wants me to go and bring cupcakes home and sing happy birthday. He's 2.5. He doesn't have a sense of time. His birthday was yesterday, tomorrow, and every day. So Mountains of Cupcake is Jay's business out in Canmore here in the mountains. And we got to get information from his business statements or his records into TaxCycle. So one of the things we designed to help preparers do this is the ability to create a template for any form in our software. So in this case, it's the T2125 in this example, but it could be anything. It could be dealing with your medical expenses. It could be any form in the software. And I'm going to show you how to do this. So what I first need to do is open the form in TaxCycle. And then I can click the Create button at the top here on the Data menu. And this will create a default spreadsheet with no data in it. I'm just going to open that on screen, and we can take a little look. So in the first column here, we have the field code, and the field code is the reference to whatever field on that form where you would normally put the data. The second column, we have the place where you can put your data in Excel so that it gets imported back into the tax return. The third column is a line number, which those of you who spend your days preparing tax returns, you have half of these memorized, so that can help people find what they need. The fourth column has a description, which is helpful because, hey, I don't remember either the line numbers or what all the field codes directly mean. So this can help you answer or complete these fields if you want. And then on the fifth one, we offer a little bit of a hint for some of these columns where you need to put a number or something different, or particularly check boxes. And that's this data type. For example, if you've got a fiscal period, let's go back over here. If you you are doing an alternate year end, and it's this one, the type of fiscal period, you would have to put a number in to select the appropriate version. All right. So this is the template that's been created. The only one thing that I would do differently than I just did is you want to add for any of the expandable tables in a form, and I'll show you what an expandable table is. It is worth adding all the rows you think you might need before you create your template. So an expandable table or expandable rows are this kind of area. So we have other income, and so I can just, other income, get a description in there, other income, just get some rows built for me. And the reason why I might want to do this is that so I have several lines in that template. So if I create the template now and open it, I'm going to see some additional lines here for those other income descriptions. More field codes is basically what it gives me. So if you've got any forms, especially medical expenses, can be handy to do this ahead of time before you start working with your template. And this is actually a good point for me to note something. We cover all of this in our documentation on our website. So if you're looking for some help, if you're using our software, trying it out, look for the import forms for Excel in our search. And there's a good example about how to manage expandable tables. You see, this is the medical expense worksheet. And if I add all these blank rows, it will give me multiple field codes for these rows. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew where to go and look for this information. All right, so you're saying to me, that looks great, Elizabeth, but my information is not in this format yet. And I'm going to show you an example of what you could potentially do, and then I'm going to give you a little cheat of where you maybe could find some of the examples too. So one of our longtime TaxCycle clients has been, who worked with us when we developed this. What I mean by worked with us is we were looking, he was interested in a feature, and so he said, this is what I do with my clients, and I want a way to import this. So he has this spreadsheet where he has data entry places to manage his small businesses. So they put all the information they need in here, or he puts it in there, and then he generates this report and then has used the magic of Excel to transfer it to that export tab that we can import into TaxCycle. So you'll see, I've got the information about the fiscal period and the address and the opening and closing inventory, and that is all nicely transferred here using the appropriate Excel. I guess they're not field codes exactly, formulas. Thank you. And as long as it appears in one of the in a field in the second column on the export spreadsheet, when I import it into TaxCycle, TaxCycle will match the field code to the amount. So whatever you need to do to get it into this format, you can build yourself a template if you would like. So I'm just going to show you what happens. I'm going to take this template, and it's as simple as saying import, and then I'm going to bring this sample one that I have in, and it brings it in, and there I've got my revenue, and I have all my expenses, and it's that quick. So what this preparer does, Matthew, is he creates a series of templates, and he's able to very quickly get his totals that he wants for whatever form it is in TaxCycle. Now, this is where I'm going to show you a little cheat, is that one of the places that a lot of our preparers hang out is our online community. And in the online community, there's discussions, as you can see, about all kinds of things, tax-related and TaxCycle related. But there is one category at the top here, if you see at the top of the menu at the top of the form, if you scroll right down, that's called sharing. And this is where we allow people to share the templates they use in their practice that others might also find useful. So Matthew has shared his business and rental statement template. That's what I based today's demo off of. He shared that for us last year, and you can see there's several people who are grateful for that. And then he's also shared a medical travel expenses template as well. And so if you're looking for some samples to try that you could then import into the appropriate worksheet or form in TaxCycle, take a look on our community and you can download those samples there. Marilyn, would you like another poll?
Elizabeth, you're so good. I was just about to ask you for a moment to do that.
Okay.
So, folks, we're just going to launch the second of our 4 polls. We'd like to know if you're using some tax software. Is it one of the ones you see there, TaxCycle Profile, a Tax Prep or CanTax, TT Max? Or if you said no to the first question, you're likely going to say none for the last. We're going to go pretty quickly here because we're coming up to nearly 12:30. We're at just about 90%, so I'll be closing the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thanks, everybody. And let's just share those results. Good news, Elizabeth, 20% nearly. Our TaxCycle.
Yay!
Yay! For that, everyone.
They get excited about these kinds of features, so I'm glad to see you here. And okay, as the time is ticking on, I'm going to speed up my pace a little bit and get us through those last 2 items so Alan can return to what he needs to talk about. So the next thing I want to talk about, because it's slips season, we want to talk about importing Excel slips into TaxCycle from Excel. So this is a little different from what we just looked at, because what we just looked at was a one-to-one relationship. The form you had on screen and having it relate directly to a spreadsheet in Excel. When you get to preparing slips, information slips like T4s and T5s, you actually have multiple forms, right? So you have one slip is considered one form, one recipient is considered one form. So there's a slightly different format that you'll want to manage that in. What we do in TaxCycle is we actually install some sample files to help you do this. So if you look under your C drive and your program files, and you find your trilogy, there's a couple of different sample files in this samples folder. But the one I'm going to look at today is this TaxCycle slips import. And the basics of this, you'll probably look at it and you go, I totally get what you're doing here. Because basically what it is you have fields along the top. This is a field, so your social insurance number, your name, and they go along here, and you have your box numbers. And then each row after that is the recipient, and each person would be creating an individual slip. So you can use this sample to start to be able to import slips into TaxCycle if you'd like. My samples I have here, there's a couple of things I want to point out. We import into T4, T4A, T5, and T5018 slips. Your spreadsheet can contain tabs for all of those. So if you have a small business that has has employees and also has some dividends to prepare, you don't have to have two separate spreadsheets. Just make sure you name the worksheet appropriately here at the bottom in Excel. When you are preparing these columns, you can leave them blank if you don't need data in a particular column. So, if there's no employment code or something like that, you don't have to worry about it. Just leave it blank. We won't import anything in that case. So the box numbers are self-explanatory. I'm just going to make some room over here on the right. If you need to do other box amounts, so on T4, sometimes you want to add other box amounts. And there's a table on the individual slips in TaxCycle here where you would have other information, and you can select box types. You can do this in the spreadsheet by using the first column saying other box and the second column and indicating the box number in it, and then the second column adding an amount. It's that simple. So I'm going to quickly import all these slips, and in TaxCycle, you will notice, and we're going to fix this at some point here soon, but since we actually have two import Excel buttons. So I want to make sure if you use the import Excel button, use the one on the far left. But rather than do that, what I prefer to do is just drag and drop this file into TaxCycle, because then I know exactly what I'm dealing with. And I just drag and drop, and it gives me a chance to confirm. And the data comes in, and I have imported all my slips. And that saved me a ton of time. Because if I'm tracking this already in Excel or in something else in a payroll program that can give me something like this in Excel, then I don't have to do all that data entry over and over again. So time saver for you. And just so you can note, if you want to re-import, you can make changes and bring it all back in again. You can also undo an import in TaxCycle. Pretty much everything you can undo. There's very little you can't. I suppose filing a return, when that's been transmitted, you're pretty much done. You have to file an adjustment then. But other things like this, you can quickly undo if you want, and the slips come back out. So you can work your way back if you have to. All right, and here's my last quick tip from Excel. We're going to go, and now we're going to talk, instead of talking about an individual return, we're going to talk about getting some data about all your returns in TaxCycle. So in TaxCycle, we have the client manager. That's what this search box at the top is. I'm going to get in there a different way today. I'm going to go over to the client manager button on the left and clear all my filters and show you a full list of clients and a standard column layout. So we have some options in TaxCycle where you can export the information about your clients to Excel. There's several different buttons here on the top right of the table in the Client Manager. You can export the current view that you see. The first one, the export to an Excel workbook, is what you see is what you get. Whatever you see on screen will end up in the spreadsheet that is created. There you go, that's the list. It can be pretty mighty sometimes depending on how many clients you have. The second option on this will give a detailed workbook. So this is interesting if you want to see everything that's on the screen plus a bunch of other columns. So sometimes you notice what we see on screen here doesn't have an address or a phone number or other kinds of information. So this gives you way more than you need. And I'm sure there's a trick to make this all the width of the columns. Actually, Alan probably knows this trick. I'm going to have to learn it sometime, but there must be a way to make these width of these columns happen of their own so that I don't have to keep expanding them. Maybe I'll have to come to the rest of Alan's webinar series and learn that. All right. And then the third option there will export just the contact information. So if you want to call all your clients or send them an email or send them something in a different format outside of TaxCycle, you can do that with that workbook. Well, what I wanted to show you today is that you can have a little more customization to what columns appear in these exports. So first off, what if I want all my clients, I want to know who hasn't paid me yet. I've invoiced them from TaxCycle and I don't know who has paid me. This quick searches sidebar here, we have some canned searches. You can save your own as well. And what I clicked on there was the outstanding invoices search. And now looks like I have pretty much the same problem client all along, but it could be a bunch of them. And I have somewhere where they haven't paid going back. So I'm going to just pin this. They haven't paid going back to 2013. But all I really care about is my 2016 returns. So I'm going to take a quick look and see who hasn't paid me yet so that I can get ahead of them before they come in this season. So there I've got people who haven't paid, but I don't have any information about their invoice, right? So if I export this, I don't know what I'm going to get. The thing I can do is add more fields to this column layout. So I went to this little menu here with a little triangle on it, and I'm going into options, and I can make a new column layout and call it invoicing. If I can type, I can do this. There we go. And this allows me to pull in the information I want and show it. So I probably want to know the name of the individual, and the name field will give me first name, last name. There's a series of invoice related columns I can put in there. So I think I'm going to grab, let's go back over here, the invoice. I'm going to drag them all across and then pull some out. There we go. Make that really easy. And if I go apply, I would customize this with a phone number and things like that. And then I can select this column layout back from that menu. And now I get all that information. So I have my invoiced amounts, my invoice before taxes, after taxes, date, all of that. I could go into more detail about how to simplify this and make this a little bit more what I need, but that's the basics of it. Create your column layout and then you see invoicing. And then I can export it and get that information into Excel just as easily as I did before with one of those buttons. And there it is. Oh, and I have one more last tip. The button right on the right here is exporting straight to Excel, but you also have the option if you need to send it to a colleague who's going to do the heavy lifting on talking to this client. The little mail button, the envelope button, will take that exported to Excel and create an email and attach it right off the bat for you, so saving you one step in the process. And that is, I've taken up more than my share of time, I think, but I think we got there. And I just wanted to remind you before I disappear that you can find information and tutorials and webinars in our online community all at www.taxcycle.com, and download your free trial and try what you did.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And that brings to an end our first mini webinar in 2018. Before you go, I'll remind you of a couple of things, and that is within 10 days of today, you will receive the recording, my teaching notes, my teaching files, your CPD certificate, and the answers to all of the questions. Thank you very much for spending time with us today, and I look forward to having you on board again at a future webinar. That's a wrap.